It didn't work. Let's look at the modern trend that we may not say Jesus, because with all this Judaizing, we must go back to the Hebrew. We must go back to our roots. So we may not say Jesus, we must say Yeshua, or maybe Yahshua. The New Testament was written in Greek, not in Hebrew. How do we know? Hebrews 1:38. Then Jesus, the Greek word there is Iesus, turned and seeing them following, said to them, "What do you seek?" They said to him, "Rabbi," that's a Hebrew word. And the Hebrew language was not generally spoken, it was Greek that was spoken. Which is to say, when translated, says the New King James Version, teacher, didaskalos, where are you staying? So here the Bible quotes a Hebrew word and immediately translates it into the Greek. So in what language was the Bible written? In Greek. Because they had to understand it. So when they used the Hebrew word, for the Greek reader, they immediately had to translate it. If I had to speak to you in Afrikaans tonight, you wouldn't understand it unless I immediately translated it for you. So in what language is this lecture being presented if I have to translate it for you? In English. John 1:41. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," Hebrew, Messias, which is translated Christos, the Christ. So immediately the Bible translates it, and that is the word that is used always. Here's another example, John 1:42, and he brought him to Jesus. Now when Jesus looked at him, he said, "You are Simon, the son of Jonah, and you shall be called Kephas." That's an Aramaic word. Immediately it needs translating for those who don't speak the Aramaic, but are rather Greeks, which is translated Petros. That's the Greek. What's the English for Petros? Stone. Pebble, if you like. So in what language was it written? It was written in Greek. John 9:7, and he said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." Well, that's a Hebrew word, which is translated sent, apostello. He went and washed and came back seeing. So when there's a Hebrew word, they translate it into Greek. When there's an Aramaic word, they translate it into Greek. And Paul consistently uses Iesus and Christos even when writing to the Hebrews. Why didn't he say Yeshua when he wrote to them? Why did he say Iesus? And why didn't he say Yeshua Messias? Why did he say Iesus Christos? For if Jesus had given them rest, and there he uses Iesus, then would he not afterwards have spoken of another day? So consistently the Bible uses the Greek form. When I go to Poland, there's a banner across the road which says Professore Voltera Feitsky. And I suppose it's me. Because that's how you would say my name in Polish. Now, if it is correct and good enough to translate the Hebrew into Greek, is it then not good enough to translate it into English or any other language? Yes or no? Now, here's a fascinating thing. The Bible was written in Koine Greek. Do you know what Greek that was? That was the Greek of the people, the common people. So later, Greek scholars thought, well, this is rather infradig. We better translate it into classical Greek. And they lost the whole nuance. All the typology gets lost. All the chiasms get lost. And so their classical translations petered out, and the Koine Greek remains. And when God chose to wake up a people and to give them the word again, he chose a Martin Luther. And he said to Martin Luther, go and translate that Bible. That was no easy task. What language did he translate it into? German? Didn't exist. There were hordes of dialects around, and Martin Luther didn't only have the monumental task of writing that Bible, but he had to create the words, as it were. He's actually the basis of what we call High German, Hochdeutsch. And if you want to know how different a dialect can sound from real German, whether you understand it or not is irrelevant, as long as you see that they're totally different. Go into the cellar and get me a bucket of potatoes. Geh mal in den Keller und hol mir einen Eimer Kartoffel. That's what it sounds like, that sentence. In Plattdeutsch it would be, jetzt jaist mal auf je Läufer, hos je Eier rumpere. Sounds like two different languages, doesn't it? And here God says, I want them all to understand it. And Martin Luther combined these, and he wrote it in a language where everybody could understand. Tyndall did the same thing. And Cranmer, the archbishop who paid with it for his life, he put the great Bible down in the churches, and he supplied a reader so that even the illiterate could hear the word of God in their own language. When God raised up movements, he used the language of the people. This notion that we must all become Hebrew scholars in order to be saved is a misnomer. There's no salvation by Hebrew. It's my favorite anomaly these days. So what don't we have? We don't have a salvation by birth. We don't have a salvation by lineage. We don't have a salvation by pronunciation. We don't have a salvation by genetic composition. And we don't have a salvation by Hebrew. It's perfectly all right to say Jesus Christ, or to say Jesus Christus, or to say Jesus Christus. It's fine. Now let's have a look where this movement leads to. It gets rather interesting.